Hi everyone, my name is Risha Shetye and welcome to Remodel Minority. For today's video, the VPP team is conducting an interview with Connie Wun from AAPI Women Lead, and she has so many insightful things to share about activism, educating, and organizing that we can't wait to share with you. So let's get into it.
Hi Connie Wun, my name is Ondrea.
Hi, my name is Cindy.
I'm Risha.
And I'm Jalyn. We are part of the Monsoon VPP Youth Intern Team. Today we're joined by a very special guest, Connie Wun. Connie, thank you for joining us today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, so thank you for having me. I am a co-founder of an organization called AAPI Women Lead. We do a lot of work with Monsoon, actually, to do the work of ending all forms of violence against Asian and Pacific Islanders, self-identified women and girls, as well as gender non-conforming folks. We also lift up the leadership of our community as well. I also do a lot of research, community-driven research across the country. I'm also an editor, and I am working on a book manuscript right now on school discipline, violence, race, and gender.
Can you tell me how you got into working into these type of things? Like, how did you get into activism?
How did I get into activism? So a couple of things is, I think, in terms of my personal experiences, you know, I was born in Oakland, and I was one of the first Vietnamese, I think, girls in my kind of school district, or, you know, my family came here in 1975, and so I came, you know, into the world just 2 years later. And so there wasn't really a racial literacy that I could use to help me identify my experiences as a first generation Vietnamese born in the United States. So I had to struggle with the racial literacy. I couldn't understand the violence that I was witnessing. I didn't have the language to kind of figure out why some of my friends were more impoverished than other people, right? So it was a personal quest for me to figure things out. So I learned a lot from, I think, the Black Power movement, a lot of Black radicals, and then I kind of continued on my journey and learned from people like Yuri Kochiyama and a number of other community leaders. Like, I personally sought them out to help me understand what was going on in my life. So that's the personal kind of experience. In terms of just it being a lifelong commitment, I've been doing this work, you know, I was a youth counselor in the mid 1990s. And then eventually I was one of the student organizers at San Francisco State, also in the 90s and the 2000s. And then I became a youth sexual assault counselor at San Francisco Women Against Rape. I ran a couple of programs across Oakland, on the Bay Area. And then I just kept seeing the violence against Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color. So I've stayed committed ever since. And that's when I was a high school teacher. I'm also a former sex worker. And then I also became a professor, and I left all of it to run an organization eventually.
Very awesome, thank you. So you said that you have been doing this for a long time. I wonder if there was anyone who inspired you to join this field?
Keep doing this work, you know, it's a couple things. One is, I think the inspiration is actually the violence that I've witnessed in my family, and the violence that my friends and community members have experienced. So I think the violence against our communities, the violence against me, that inspires me to continue fighting against it and to end it. That's my main kind of inspiration. And then in terms of like icons, you know, I've learned a lot from people like Asada Shakur. I've directly learned from Yuri Kochiyama. I've learned from friends like, Mira Youssef, Mimi Kim. There are a lot of, Asian self-identified women and Pacific Islander women, Native Hawaiian women like Haunani K. Trask that continue to inspire me.
Connie, that is amazing to hear. I just had a couple questions. So you mentioned that API Women Lead works on gender-based violence. So I was wondering, why do you think it's important to talk about sexual violence in the API community?
I think it's super important to talk about sexual violence, largely because when we're examined, our experiences are under-examined, they're misunderstood, but from the limited research that we do have, about, depending upon whose study you lean on, there's about 40 to 60% of our community members that have been impacted by gender violence. So these limited studies are already saying that it's happening at exponential rates. And it's important for us to talk about it because those numbers are scratching the surface. If you talk to our community members and you listen to our stories anecdotally by our own experiences, whether it be, sitting at the salon or just talking to other family members, it's actually much more common for our family members to experience child sexual assault, other forms of sexual violence, sexual harassment, right? But those stories are undertold and under-listened to. So it's important for us to destigmatize our stories, right? Our storytelling. And it's also very important for us to denaturalize how often it happens in our communities. It's like wedded into our culture, gender violence. So we have to expose it and then figure out the root of it and stop it.
So having and seeing all these personal and learning from so many people, what does that mean for you? What does activism mean to you then?
What does activism mean to me? It means multiple things. I think for me, I don't actually see myself as an activist. I see myself as an educator and an organizer, right? And so what that means is that I'm constantly trying to teach and learn wherever I can, right? I don't believe that I'm doing anything on behalf of communities. I'm a part of communities, right? In that sense, because I'm a part of communities, then I'm constantly educating and helping to organize and to mobilize our communities. And by our, I also mean Asian, Pacific Islander, Black, Indigenous, right? In solidarity with each other. It means to me that we're constantly figuring out ways to end the violence against us. That means state violence, right? That means, ending, police violence against communities. It means ending incarceration. It means, holding, the state responsible for, health disparities, right? So that to me is organizing. Organizing also means having a multi-layered analysis of what the problem is. So it's not just about, me and so have a problem. It means looking at how does the state, the United States and its institutions cause all these problems? How come poverty is an issue and how does that impact my everyday experience, right? With me and my friend or me and my father. You see what I'm saying? So being an organizer means you have a layered analysis, means you look at how is homophobia impacting everything? How is the state impacting everything, right? You also look at how your everyday experiences informs all of that. You know what I mean? So that's what it means for me to be an organizer and an educator, and to use all of my resources to support my community members.
I really love your analysis of what the difference you think between activism and organizing/educating is. And I think it's a really important distinction to make at times. You mentioned earlier that you were inspired as a youth growing up in California to become more passionate and learn more about issues that you saw affecting people. So what do you say to youth who want to get into activism, and why do you think youth should be in activism?
It's To be honest with you guys, there's a couple of things. You know, I started becoming much more activated when I was about 17 to around 19. 19 was when I hopped on a train and went to go to Harlem from California to meet, you know, icons, to learn about things, right? I say that that moment was really important because it's during a time when I was really curious about what was happening to me and what was happening to the people around me. I was super curious, right? And I value younger generations and younger versions of me because you couldn't tell me anything. I was like, I am coming into my own voice. I get to figure all of these things out, and this is how I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? And so I want to be able for younger generations to capitalize off of that energy, you know, because as you get older, in my experiences, people will try to silence you even more. They'll try to silence your curiosities even more, right? But you get a chance to figure things out, you know? And ironically, you know, here in California, there's a proposition called Proposition 16, which is an anti-affirmative action initiative, right? Which means, you know, essentially affirmative action was to diversify, you know, access to education, access to jobs. When I was 19 years old, I was organizing to stop this proposition in 1996. 23 years later, the state is saying, oh, we messed up in 1996 when we passed this legislation, and so we'd like to recall that legislation. 23 years later. The reason I bring this up to you guys is because I knew when I was in my teenage years something was wrong. It took this state 23 years to catch up to us. So that's why I think younger generations, we know, you know, when I was younger, I knew a lot more. And now I'm just much more resourced to be able to fulfill what it was that I knew as a kid. You know what I mean? So I just find, like, I'm over here like, I told you when I was 19, now I'm 42 years old. I'm just like, you all didn't listen to us. Right? So that's one of the reasons why I'm like, young people, y'all are fearless. So don't let them try to contain that fearlessness. So that's why I'm like, you know, what we need to be doing as older generations is to equip you all with what to do and to have your backs and to give you as much knowledge that we acquired to be like, yeah, that worked and it didn't, but it's kind of up to you. You know what I mean? So that's how I see things and why you need to be active, because you're smarter than most people.
Awesome. I really love your answer. I wonder if you talked a lot about larger scales of activism. A lot of the activism that many people think of are larger movements where they go on marches. So I wonder, on a personal level, how can we advocate for whatever we want to advocate for?
Okay, so again, I appreciate that question because it's multi-layered. You have to do the work every single day, right? I think that's what you're asking. And every day organizing and activism to constantly learn, right? History tends to repeat itself, and history informs every single day. So you guys can see what's happening right now with who's winning, especially in Iowa, or what happened in Iowa. That's history on a continuum. So you want to study that. And then every day you study that, and every day you figure out where to make holes. Then you figure out also, you study like who won, where, and how. You study them too. And then you bring all those resources back. And you start to educate yourself. You start to, like, you know, kind of put dents in the people that you work with. You find your political home. You make a political home, right? That's every day you're building a community to make change. That's an everyday experience. I would have, you know, when I started working with Monsoon, that's because I formed a relationship with, you know, Mira Youssef, who's the executive director, from someone else that I had worked with when I was 20 years old. So I've been building a relationship with Monsoon without knowing it for 20 plus years. And now we have a national relation, a nationwide relationship, right? But that took an everyday relationship building and learning and experiencing and building so that we can call on each other when we need each other, right? There's also, just quickly, mutual aid is a form of activism and organizing, right? Mutual aid means that you take care of each other, right? You know, when your friends need something, or your neighbor needs something, or your neighbor's cousin needs something, then you take care of them in the ways that you're able to. And that helps us to build together a community, right? For something that is different from what is happening, from what is happening across your state. Sorry. When I saw all the red, I was like, ooh, what's happening over there? Right? So I just was like, thank goodness there's a monsoon.
Yeah, honestly, it's so scary. And I think as youth, we've been watching the election, and we've just been so anxious because we're too young to vote. So sometimes we feel a little bit hopeless on what we can do. So we love to wrap up these interviews asking the question, what would you tell someone who wants to do something, or what would you tell someone that you're recruiting to be an activist? Like, what advice would you give them?
My advice would be just do it. You find your community and just do it, and know that it's trial and error, and you have to be courageous. Because I'm looking at you all right now, and I implore you to know that you're not alone, right? And it's going to take, your generation learning from other generations and building together for us to make the kind of change. This country has been around for hundreds of years, doing a lot of damage here and across the world. To make the change will require a lot of people being conscious of that and wanting to take care of each other in ways that are different from what we've been taught. So that's going to take some time, and it's going to take every minute. And you need to just know that you're not by yourself, and that instinct that you have to taking care of the world is an important one to hold on to, and let no one tell you differently. You let no one tell you differently. When your parents are trying to tell you, no, you need to be doing this, you'll be like, yeah, I got that. However, I'm also doing this. And in the long run, whether they come to agree with you or not, we don't know. But you stay true to what your instincts and your intuition tells you. If you want better for the world, you're going to create better for the world, because we need it.
Thank you so much, Connie. You are incredibly inspirational and empowering, and it was such a treat to be able to talk to you. So thank you for giving us your time and just your insights.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to come talk, and thanks for being attentive, and thanks for all the work that you're all doing. I know there's a lot ahead of you. Just know you're not by yourself, and there are a lot of people who are grateful for the work you're doing. And they don't even know you just started. There's more to come. They're busted. So don't worry about it, guys. We got this. Just one step at a time. Just do it together. Have each other's backs.
Thank you so much. That's amazing. Okay.
Yeah. It's good to see your faces.
Thank you, Connie.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.